Welcome to my studio. I don't know what time of day it is for you, but it's morning for me here. I'm glad you stopped by. And again, once again, I assume that you're here because you want to do another art project, right? Well, I've got a really fun one today. Before I get into it, I just want to know, how are you doing today? Okay? Has it been okay? Have you tried to get, it was kind of wet yesterday, but we were out in the, my wife and I were out in the garden a lot yesterday in between the rain. But just want to check up with you, make sure that you're doing okay, you're not too bored, you're keeping safe, that kind of thing, right? Well, we're doing okay too. Okay, let's get to this art project because this is going to take a little bit of time. And I suggest that if you are into doing this and you want to do this project, you might want to see this video a couple of times because there's a lot of steps to it. You do one thing first, and then you do another, and then you do another, and you do another. Today is about stand-up landscapes. Now, for those of you who don't know what a landscape is, it's let's say if you are standing in the street and you just look back at your house or the apartment that you live in, and you look at everything in front of you. Well, that's a landscape. Everybody's seen pictures of beautiful mountain scenes and rivers, or maybe even waterfalls, that kind of thing. That's a landscape. And so what it is, it's capturing a place, right? And a lot of people do it with paint. Some people even do it kind of with sculpture, not so much, but a lot of paintings, different kinds of painting about landscapes. But what we're going to do is akin to kind of a pop-up book. And I've already made one up so you know exactly what you're getting into, right? Okay, now here's mine. I want you to look at it real carefully, right, and look at it from the side. See how I did that? What I've done is I have created a kind of a weird landscape with mountains and a spaceship and a red weenie dog and some trees and stuff like that, maybe some clouds in the back, right? This is what I call a stand-up landscape. What you're doing is you're creating a little scene, and it can be just as weird as mine is. I mean, here I've got a red weenie dog waving at a spaceship, right? You can do anything that you want for your landscape. Now, keep in mind, too, is that it's important for you to kind of get a couple of things before we start cutting and folding and coloring and stuff like that. This is something that I want you to think about. Back a long time ago, several hundred years ago, there were companies, theater companies, stage stuff. There were, they would do these plays on a stage, right? And instead of like putting real furniture or, real, like refrigerators and stoves and sofas and chairs, what they would do is they would make these flat paintings, right? They would make these flat paintings. This was mostly in Europe at the time, but made these flat paintings of a chair or a refrigerator. And they would stand them up. So when you're in the audience, you're looking at the front, right? These were not full three-dimensional, right? We've talked about 3 dimensions before. These were just these flat paintings that were kind of cut out in the shape of the things that they needed for the stage, right? And so it was kind of a weird thing, but it was kind of a cool thing too. I've seen, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I've seen pictures of these really amazing theater sets that were created just like that. I mean, it would be like something like that with like real people walking around in this stand-up landscape. Another thing too, back in the the latter part of the, the early, the latter part of the 19th century, there were these things called Valentine's Day cards, Victorian Tynes card. And that's kind of like the pop-up books I was talking to you about. You open them up, and they had these layers of flat, right? Layers of these flat pictures that they staggered. They had some in front. They had some in front. They had some in the middle, a little bit more in the middle, and then they had this backdrop, right? Well, that's kind of what we're going to do today. Now, it's not a true pop-up because it's not a card. We're not going to open it. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a landscape of your choice. So you kind of got to think about that and how you're going to do that. And then I'm going to take you step by step on how you do that. Okay? Now, first things first, you need some paper. You need some, and it's best if there's any way that you have what's called cardstock. Cardstock is just a thicker piece of paper, right? Or construction paper. If you have a white or a cream colored construction paper, you can use that. But it needs to be, the paper needs to be a little bit thicker because they're going to be standing up straight, right? And I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is get you a thick piece of paper, and I want you to fold it. Let me kind of fold it, and then I can show you a little bit better on how much I want you to fold, right? See this? It's kind of a, there is more flat surface, but then you have just this little bitty thing that stands up. That's the first pop-up, right? That's the first stand-up. See what I got? Very easy. You guys can do it. And it's really good if you, when you fold it, to really take your fingers and you just really press it, right? And so make it flat. And then once you do that, right, it will eventually stand up. Just like this one. See how I did the back? Just like that. Right? And that's kind of going to be your backdrop. You can put clouds or suns and stuff like that on that. Okay, got that? Okay, the next thing, and this is kind of important. I'm going to want you to do at least 3 layers. And what I mean by that, now watch this side here. I've got one stand up here. I've got another stand up in front. And then I've got these 2 and 3 up front. So I've staggered them. So you've got maybe a real small one down here because you don't want it too big because it's going to, you don't want to block off your landscape. But keep in mind, and I'm sure you know this, some of you have already done this kind of thing, but for those of you that haven't, I want you to get this right, and I know you can get this right. The things in front are going to look bigger. The next row behind it is going to be smaller, and the very back part is going to be smaller, because that's how we look. That's called perspective. When you look down your street, the things that are really close to you, right, they're bigger, right? They're right in front of you, and if it's your brother and he's taller than you are, or your sister that's taller than you, she's right there and she's big. But then if you look down the street, things appear to get smaller. So by the time you're looking way, 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 way down the street, things look like about that big. And that's the perspective of space. You look at it, the things that are closer to you are bigger, and as you go back, they get smaller and smaller. And so I kind of want you to try to remember to do that. See how the mountains look like they're way, way in the distance, right? And the little bush in the front, right, gives you a sense of depth, what's called depth. Now, if you look at it like this, it doesn't look like much, right? So make sure that after you get all this done correctly, this thing looks better at eye level, right? So you could put it like on a shelf or something, and it'll look like the stand-up. See, you don't get really the idea here or even up here, but if it's at eye level, look at that. Isn't that kind of cool? I like my red weenie dog. It reminds me of one of mine. I got a weenie dog. Okay, so you've got this going. Okay, once you finish this, just set this aside. Now, what I've done is I've already drawn out the same kind of thing I did here, right? The mountains and the sun, right? What I've done is I've just made, and you can do anything. You don't have to do, you can do pyramids, you can do buildings in the background, but just make sure that you make them smaller, because what we're going to do is we're going to start at the back, and then we're going to layer them forward. So what I would normally do is I would color this first, right? But to save a little bit of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out. All right. Now, you need to draw these out first, right? And again, use your imagination. What I would suggest you do is that you you think of what you're going to do first before you start drawing, right? You know me. I want you to be able to have a vision in your head of what you're going to do, okay? Now, to make them stand up straight, here is the trick. And you got to do this, right? You can't do them unless you do this. Okay, here's the landscape, right? Okay, what I want you to do, on the bottom, I want you to fold the paper. Let me see. Here we go. Fold the paper. Not much, just a little edge here, right? Gonna fold the paper. Okay. Got that? See what I've done? I fold the paper backwards, right? Make that crease really, really good, right? Okay, see what I've done? I've made a little bitty ledge right here of paper. And this is so important because everything that you cut out has to have this little ledge, or what I call a tab, okay? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper like this, right? And I am going to glue this back like that. Right? Can you see that? So once you get your first one, okay, now this is going to call this number 1, and it goes to the back, right? So what you're going to be needing to get all this started: paper, glue, scissors, and colored pencils. Now, because I only have a certain amount of time, that's why I made this thing up first. It's best that when you draw your paper, your elements, your pieces, you color them out first before you cut them out. It's just a lot easier when you color them in before you cut them out. Okay, so I got my glue stick. Okay, let me see that. Everybody's worked with glue stick before, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back here. It takes a little bit of maneuvering, and I'm going to make sure that I really glue this thing down really, really well. Once you got that done, Make it stand up. So you've got your background here, right? You've got your first stand up. That's going to be your background, right? Now keep in mind, I'm not coloring these. That's why I colored this one, is because this is only a kind of a 30-minute thing, and it would take me 30 minutes to color all these in. But you can do this on your own, right? Okay, here's the first one. Now keep in mind, while you're doing this, you're going to layer them. And what I mean by layer here, let me put it like this. Okay, so we have the background. That's one. We have this. Well, this is the back base, right? And then we've got the background. The next thing that you do, and you can make it do one or two, you put another row in, right? You leave space, and see how I left space between the back part and the background, right? See, I can put my fingers through them. You're going to do the same thing here. You're going to put you've got your background, and now what I want you to do is I want you to go up a little bit and make another row, right? Once you get that finished, you can make another row. And what I mean by row, it doesn't have to be something like that goes all the way across. It can be like, my next one was this tree, right? Right? I made the tree, and then I made my spaceship. Then I made my dog, right? And then just to make it even more kind of three-dimensional, right? I made this little tiny bush to put up front. So I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then once I did that, I glued some clouds to this little back area here. Some of you may be able to cut real well. Some of you may not. Just do your best. Remember that it'll look better if you can cut along the drawing lines, right? That's going to take a little bit of time. Don't rush this. Now, here's the big deal. And this is so important. Okay, I've got one of my trees, right? Now, I want you to look at it real well. I made my tree, but you see this little tab back here? Everything that you put on your landscape has to have a little tab at the bottom. Because if you don't have the little tab at the bottom that you can fold over and glue, you can't glue them. Now, if you make a mistake and you forget to put the tab, you could always cut out a tab and glue it to the back. So even if you forget, and sometimes I even forget, so, it just happens like that. So what I'm going to do, just do your best. You know me. I'm not into perfect pictures or perfect things. All I want you to do is try. And guys, I've had kids that had, they did dinosaurs, unicorns running in the fields with mountains in the background. You can do anything you want. You can take the things that you really, really like dogs or cats and that kind of stuff, and you just put them in a place. That's the cool thing, is that you don't have to do exactly what I did, right? This is just an example of things that you can do. Okay, you see that? Here's my tree, or my bush, and I've got this little tab right here, and that's what I'm calling them. And what you do is you fold them over, just like that. See that? Fold them to the back. Take your glue stick, and really put some glue on this thing. Don't just swipe it. In fact, I know this may sound gross, but I tell my kids to leave glue boogers, little bits of glue, because if you have that on there, you know that it's going to really bond to the surface of this paper, and it's not going to go anywhere. So the next thing you do is you need to compose your picture. Okay, where do you want this? Where do you want this tree on this thing here? Right? See, I thought, okay, let's do it right there. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing that down, and then I fold it back up. Guys, this is, in one way, it's really kind of easy, right? But in another ways, it's a little difficult. Again, most of the classes that I have are 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and everybody can do these. I've even had some 3rd graders that did some really good stuff. It all depends on how well you cut and how well you glue. But these are so cool. In fact, I had this one kid, one of the coolest ones that he ever did was he did outer space, right? And so he had some stars, and he had some shooting stars up here. Really cool. Another one that I thought was so cool was he did a cityscape, meaning it was like big, like buildings and skyscrapers in the back, and he had a King Kong. I don't know if you're familiar with King Kong. He was the giant monkey on top of one of the buildings. That was so cool. So use your imagination on these things. I think that you will really enjoy it to do that. This kind of, it's actually kind of like a three-dimensional collage. You know, we've done projects with collages before, but what you're doing is you're cutting out, and I would hope for you to do at least 3 or 4 elements. I call these elements. 1 element, 2 element, 3 element, 4 element, 5 element. Do at least 3, and make sure that you stagger them, meaning make sure that you leave space. Make sure that you leave space in between all of these. Just like if this was on a stage and there were real actors that had to walk around the dog and behind the spaceship, right? Anyway, I think this can be a fun project. I know that when I've done them in my class, we put them up on shelving, and again, they look the best at eye level. You can walk around them. This is again a simple project. Some of you, I know that some of you guys may have problems with cutting them out. Just do your best. The more you work with any tool, this is a tool, right? This is a tool. When you look down your street and you see things that are big and close to you, and as they get smaller and smaller and smaller, the farthest point that you can see with your eye is called the vanishing point, right? Because that's what it seems to be. That up front, when they're close, they're big, but they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they vanish. It's called the vanishing point. So, I hope you can enjoy this. I know you can do it. It's time for me to get out of here. I really appreciate you coming. My next project I'm going to be doing, the next video, will be about using watercolor in creating a real weird, fanciful place. I think that you'll really like it. But anyway, take care. Stay safe. Don't be bored. You're too young to be bored. Get out there, be creative, and try to have some fun during this period of time where we can't really get out much. Take it easy. I'll see you next time.